Yeah.
I'll call the May meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We have a very full agenda, which I'll get to in a second. I do want to introduce, we have a new city employee who we're going to get to know real well in the next couple of months, Trevor Minor. Trevor, please stand up and wave to everybody. He is our new budget director. Comes here from the Raleigh area and has got a lot of experience, and we look forward to working with you. Every year is a challenging year. This year, no exception. So welcome aboard. Good to have you. We will begin with the consent agenda. Are there any items, and the chair has some, but I'll see if anyone else has any. Ms. Burke?
C5.
C5, okay.
10.
10.
14.
14.
Oh, Lord.
15.
C15.
I have some.
Hang on a minute.
C6.
C6. Montgomery.
C1,
C1.
C8,
C8.
and C17.
C17. The chair had C2, C7, 8, 9, and 10. And some of those may be from other folks.
Yeah.
I've got in total C1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 15, and 17. Did I get all the ones that anyone wants pulled? I think that leaves C3 and C11. Is there a motion to approve those?
Move for approval.
Second. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. So I'm just going to go numerically, if that's okay with everybody. I think I wrote them down in the right order. We'll start with C1, please. You'll read it.
Resolution authorizing the sale of certain city-owned property under the provisions of NCGS 160A-269 to the Liberty Community Development Corporation, property located at the southwest corner of Northwest Boulevard and Liberty Street, located in the East Ward. Receipt of $22,500.
Before we get this, I've just been informed by legal counsel that we need to pull C4. Is that correct?
I thought you approved C3 and 11. C4, you didn't.
Oh, we just need to vote on it. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. C1, who has for this?
I did.
Okay, Ms. Montgomery.
And Mr. Page, I'll look to you on this one. In reference to this property and the sale and the attachments in terms of the development there, as we talked earlier, my only concern on this item is making sure that whatever development takes place there, in which I've had conversation with the Liberty Street CDC, is that aesthetically that it is in line with what is already there. And so what I would like to add to this resolution is specific language that says that the building structure would be consistent with the structure that is at the corner of 14th and Liberty Street.
Mr. Page, you want
Yes,
to
sir, Councilman Montgomery. That won't be a problem. We can actually go back in and add language to the conditions that would require that the construction of the new property would have to be consistent in design and appearance as the building located at the southeast corner of Liberty Street and 14th Street. And we can add that in for council's consideration on Monday. But we'll put that.
If we did that, who would determine if it's consistent? Would we have a?
I think what we'd be looking at, I think what Councilman Montgomery is looking for is the brick facade, the same type of treatment. So what we can do is make sure that when they apply for their building permits, that they have to show that type of design.
But who's going to make the decision that it's consistent is what I'm asking, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's looking for the brick facade type of treatment.
Okay.
So that would be the same type of aesthetics, as opposed to he doesn't want cinder block type of aesthetic or vinyl siding. So I think what we may do is when the building permits are issued, just make sure that it's for that type of design.
So it'll be up to the folks issuing the building permit to be sure it's done. Okay. Ms. Burke, you have a comment?
The reason I'm glad that Councilman Montgomery bring this up, the business right next to that, when we went out there with the plan, we did a poor job, because when you look at, and I've been in communication with the city manager about it, been with Mr. Brooks about it, we did a very poor job, because now all you see are some trucks And if a person's going to put something to beautify, and you're going to ask them to do a certain something, and we ourselves, when a plan was developed, did not ask for that. So you need to have some type of screening, because they're going to have to look at nothing but trucks. So you see them, don't you? Buses, and we were very nice to automotive company. When we went in there, we worked with them, and I don't think we asked enough of them. So make sure people who are coming will understand. And since I'm into this, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask Mr. A question: how are we going to get that to look like something, since we were spending all of the tax dollars trying to make things look good? And that's going to be a very, very, very important Liberty Street corridor from downtown to on out to the airport. How do we propose to talk to those people with automotive technology? Automotive.
You're from Auto Springs, I think. They were actually there prior to, and we haven't actually had any transactions with them, but we continue to have ongoing conversations with them, trying to encourage them to do more screening in that area. We've actually offered some incentives to them as part of the building improvement program. So, unfortunately, because of the zoning, of general use zoning that they have in that area, and the fact they've not acquired any property from us, or there's very little that we can do as long as they fall in compliance with the current codes, which unfortunately they do. But we can keep offering incentives to them. I think the conversation continues.
Let me ask another question. Did we give them anything at all?
I don't recall ever doing anything with them, Councilman Burke.
Okay, but when they were at the meetings, because they did come to the meeting, he and his son both.
Years ago.
Years ago. Well, at that particular time, we didn't see a need that we could have spoken to them about trying to blend in with how we expected for Liberty Street to look as a leading-in corridor.
They have not been as willing to do things that you would hope they would be, and they've done them to the letter of the law.
And what we had to do, we had a church there, Mount Calvary Holy Church, and we went in there and put some trees because it looked so bad. And that's Sister Shirley Caesar's church, and they bring people from all around the country. Bishop Harold, who was the bishop there, but now it's another bishop there. But I just think it's not kind when we have people in the neighborhood, and maybe they don't have any need in the neighborhood but to come there to do their business, and then those of us who appreciate our neighborhoods and our churches, they have to deal with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burke. Go ahead.
I was going to make a motion.
Yeah, if you make a motion, that'd
Okay.
be nice.
I move approval of item C1 with the amendment to add the language that the structure built on the property would have an aesthetic, will be aesthetically not compatible with the property on the southeast corner of 14th and Liberty Street.
Second.
And the only thing I add to this conversation is it may be interesting to have a conversation with Liberty, and I'll be willing to have that, about some type of overlay of some sense, because the reason that this is even important is because there is no overlay that dictates how the aesthetic appeal of structures built in the area will look. So therefore, that's why this is even necessary. And what you have there at the corner of 14th and Liberty Street with Medicap and the facade and how that building looks, and moving forward down with the gas station and other commercial development that's happened there, even all the way down to the Career Center, is you see a total shift in how the buildings look. And so if we want that to be consistent, I think there's some more conversation to be had on how new development happens along that part of Liberty Street.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on C1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. We will now go to C2.
Resolution authorizing the acquisition of properties for Kirklees Road, Hertford Road, and Chester Road sidewalk improvements by deed located in the West Fork.
I had this one pulled. Is Kirk here? Come on up. This is my infamous sidewalk on Kirklees, which I'm great to see taking place. You say in your comments that subject to appraisal, these are the suggested values, and you'll come back later if they're different. How did you come up with these values?
These values, Councilmember Clark, the land values are based on the tax value. Typically, the appraisals reflect some kind of a discount because we're not buying in fee simple. We're buying easements. And then the improvements, we arrived at those values based on shrubbery, trees from other appraisals that have been done in the past.
Okay.
So offers would be made to the property owners based on the staff calculations. If the property owners do not accept that, then we will pay for an independent fee appraisal, bring that back to the city council for approval, and make the property owner a new offer. That's the standard procedure that council has approved.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions in this area, Ms. Adams?
Yes. Was this something that the community requested or something that was part of our sidewalk improvements that we do?
Both.
No, both?
Both, yeah. It's been on the list for a long time.
And my question, I guess, is just kind of going backwards to like Polo Road, right there from University to Indiana or whatever. Could we not have done this too with them, that street, or is it because I've been told that there's not enough room to do it? There are no sidewalks. There's just a street and then it's land, the yard.
Councilmember Adams, I was not involved in the design, only in the acquisition process. Perhaps Mr. Turner could speak to that.
Councilmember Adams, that process might be used on Polo Road when we get to that point. As you know, it's a bond project, and so when we get ready to do that one, if the bonds are approved, that might be the process we use for acquisition of the necessary right-of-way for that project.
But also, if the bonds aren't approved, and I'm just thinking fast forward, can we still do this on Polo Road in this type?
If funding is identified and approved by council, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Since this is my area, I'll make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say
May
aye.
I-
Oh, excuse me. Yes, ma'am. I'm
All right.
sorry.
I want to bring to the attention of Councilmember Adams, if we order it down, we're going to pay for it. But if you have some taxpayers to order it down, they're going to have to pay for it if we still have the same thing on the book. So be mindful when they start petitioning things, let them know they'll end up paying the buck. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C2 passes. C3 was approved in the consent, so I will now go to C4. This is the one I inadvertently had missed. There was no one asked for it to be approved. Do we have a motion to approve it?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C4 is done. We will now go to C5. You'll read this, please.
Resolution giving preliminary approval to the issuance of revenue bonds to finance the acquisition, rehabilitation, and equipping of an affordable housing development known as University Place Apartments located in the East Ward.
I had a question on this, Ms. Montgomery. This is in your ward. I think you had a
I had a
issue.
question too, and I think Ms. Burke is one who asked for it to be pulled.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I can wait for mine. I don't want it right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
go ahead. Do you have a question?
Can
Comment?
you explain, Mr. Brooks?
We may both have had it, Chip.
Okay.
There's so many of my things we try to go.
Good afternoon, council members. Can I explain this action?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll do my best.
Okay.
It's an action whereby we're being asked to issue revenue bonds for the acquisition, to assist with the acquisition and rehabilitation of University Place Apartments, which is located in East Winston. It's the old hospital building. And it's my understanding that this action, the actual financing would be from the revenue generated from the bonds and would not constitute any financial obligation of the city. Because of the bond financing that was being discussed, and it was stated that the city had the authority to issue the bonds, I arranged for a conference call between the management company and the city attorney and the chief financial officer. I was looking to the city attorney's office to advise us on the city's authority to do what we were told we can do, and the finance office to confirm that if council decided to approve this action, that it would not be obligating the city for any revenue. So I believe that conference call was held, and could you please address that?
Ms. Saunders, come on up.
And actually, as it's coming on this one, and you can address that part too, but deeper question I have on that is, in this university place, and it's something it's in East Ward, and I think it's a good development serving community, but the question I have is this type of financing, understanding it does not give us the specific dollars, when are we allowed to use this, and in terms of using this for this source, if another agency that provides housing wants this type, what standard do we use to be able to say, yes, we're going to use this for you, and no, we're not going to use this for you?
Councilmember Montgomery, it's really, and Angela might help me with the exact statute, but it's just, there's language in North Carolina statutes that will allow a local government, a city or a county or state government that can issue in the debt, but there's no obligation, there's none of our collateral, there's no liability for the city of Winston-Salem. It's not something we would initiate. It's something that the developer came to us to initiate, but they need our approval or council's approval to actually issue the debt.
So how often, in the question, how often have we done this before? Is this the first time we're doing this?
Before, and I can't tell you exactly the projects, but it was many, many years ago. Northeast Ventures, that kind of rings a bell. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but it was done many, many years ago.
Does anyone in the room have, Mr. Mayor, you may have the oldest memory here because you used to work in this area. Do you remember?
Yeah, we've issued them in the past, but excuse me if I might.
No, that's, yeah.
Lisa, but if this thing went south, we still would, well, it's not on us officially, but wouldn't we step up?
The collateral actually, in this particular case, I'm told, is there is a HUD loan, and there's construction funds, and then there's their own cash.
Okay.
And it's a very short-term loan. They told us it's between an 18 and a 24-month loan, so it doesn't even go to the local government commission for approval. This is less than 59 months.
So it wouldn't, if it went south, it wouldn't affect our
Doesn't have,
credit or anything of that
They have
nature?
collateral to cover it. It's not ours.
Okay, let me get back here.
Excuse me.
You got any more questions? I'll move on. Okay, Ms. Burke, you.
No, I wanted to know about that.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Yes, I would like the information on previous that we've done similar to this. I think, again, when we have ventures that come to us like this, council, some of us, we need some history on whether, as Councilmember Montgomery stated, whether we've done this before or not, because that's important to me, because I need to understand, again, how long it was, what type of project it was, you know, was it successful? Was there any hiccups in it for us or anything like that? Chair, I guess my concern is with this is because this is one of these items that I think we may need to have more discussion on. I really do.
Yeah. Well, let me, if I can, let me ask my questions. And the mayor kind of alluded to this. I'm assuming the city is issuing the revenue bonds. Mm-hmm. Now, in theory, or in legal ease, their city is not obligated. It's the revenue from the apartment rental.
Correct.
But I will tell you, I think this council would think long and hard about allowing revenue bonds for the city of Winston to default, because it would give us a black eye. So I do think this is something not to be entered in lightly. And I would like more detail, and I think what Ms. Adams alluding to, of, okay, if we're giving them $6 million, and there's also financing from, I've lost my place here,
North Carolina.
housing tax credits and some other things. I'd like a few more numbers that would show here's the total cost of the project, here's where the funding's coming. It sounds like you may have short-term funding requirements and long-term funding. Because if you're telling me this is 18 to 24 months, that's more like a construction loan versus a long-term finance, in which case, who's going to take us out, I guess is what I'm asking. So, and I see someone standing. Sir, is this your project?
I am with the Finch Group, sir, and we...
Go to the mic. If you give your name and address for the number. Name and address. Your name and address. Yes, your name and address.
I apologize for being late.
No problem.
Blame Delta Airlines for that. But my name is Wes Finch. I'm the chairman of the Finch Group in Boca Raton, Florida. My address is 6111 Broken Sound Parkway in Boca Raton. And 6, 7 years ago, I came in front of you all on Forest Ridge Apartments, which is today Kensington Village, and Robin Lyles runs it, and we all work together, and I've lived up to everything you pointed out to me. This is a typical low-income housing tax credit project. We bring in low-income housing tax credits through the state of North Carolina, issued by the state of North Carolina. There's an open and ready market for them. The way these transactions are structured, you get a tax-exempt bond, tax-exempt financing that comes with something called as-of-right tax credits. They're not competitive in North Carolina, so you will get them. If they accept the project, they have accepted the project. You have to pay for your construction with the tax-exempt financing. So what you do, and we've done this before in other places, you go out and you get a typical, what's called a HUD 221D4 permanent mortgage. And the tax-exempt loan is actually, your bond is actually collateralized by cash, 100% cash. And as you draw down the money out of the 221D4 mortgage, it comes into this bank account, and you pay for the construction or the work out of this bank account. So the bank account is always there with 100% cash collateral. Excuse me for that. And so the risk is de minimis because of that. It's just the typical standard way of doing it. It is done that way because, believe it or not, tax-exempt interest rates are higher than taxable interest rates today. So you get the best of both worlds. You get automatic low-income housing tax credits, and then you also get the money's paid back as soon as the project is placed in service, means the construction is done, certificate of occupancy is issued. We put 2 years on it. It's probably less than that, but you don't want to make a mistake on the other side. So it's a very safe, very secure way of doing it. The foundation has been in Winston-Salem for a long time. The property is great. It was refinanced in 2006. Unfortunately, at that time, not all the work that should have been done was done. This is to cure those ills.
So the HUD loan is is the permanent financing, and,
Yes, sir.
and we're basically providing a construction loan. Is it?
Yes and no. You are allowing us to get tax exempt financing because it's being issued. The issuer is the city of Winston-Salem. You have, as I think has been said, there's no liability to the city whatsoever. Your concern about not defaulting, obviously, is a serious one. But with cash collateral being replaced by a federal guarantee, 100% federal guarantee, I mean, I don't never say never, but it's almost impossible to mess this up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Montgomery?
And coming back around on it, understanding and North Carolina Housing Foundation and then the Finch Group, what is this relationship? And I'm really asking all these questions. I don't know if it's my fault or what, but when this came on Thursday, this, as the councilman of the area, this was one of the first times I'm getting acquainted with this project, which for me causes some concern, and I'm familiar with both groups. So what's the relationship?
Well, first of all, I apologize. We messed up on that. We only received approval to go forward on April 7th, and the drop dead date is now next week. We got an extension of time through a week from, I think, Wednesday. The relationship is the foundation owns the property now. The foundation will be the general partner, the owner of the property in the future. The Finch Group, for the last 30-something years, excuse me, we've been doing low-income housing and HUD-related work throughout the eastern part of the United States. Last time we were in Winston-Salem with Forest Ridge, we used Blanco Tackerberry, a great law firm, local law firm, and Carrie got a hold of me and said, can you take a look at this, please? And I've wanted to come back and work in Winston because this is very self-serving, but it's a great community, and it's been a wonderful relationship for us. Now, we're also asking, at this point, we're just saying, please allow us to go forward and make the application. We know we have to come back in front of you with all the details, with all the underwriting. This is just allowing us to make the next step. There's no commitment here until we come back before you, probably towards the end of this year. It does not work all that quickly. With all the details that Richie and Mellon and your staff and legal and everybody else will look at.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Sound like you're up against a pretty tight time frame.
Yeah, we are. Let's hurry up and wait, and then hurry up again.
I will say, and I do remember you, and that's for folks in the room. That is the apartment complex across the street from the new Atkins High School.
Okay.
Our city attorney is waving at me. Would you like to offer a comment?
Well, there was a question about statutory authority, and
Yeah.
there are actually two statutes, 168, 456, community development programs and activities, and then the other statute is 157, which allows us to act as a housing authority. So there's adequate statutory authority.
Okay. So, I do think we need to move this forward. We can do it with or without recommendation. I do like your comments. It would be nice if we could get those translated into English for the council meeting. And I'm not sure which, probably shouldn't ask the city attorney to do that because I know what it would read like. But if it's okay with the committee, I would like to send it forward and also ask the staff to, again, to provide a little more detail on how these various things come together on it. Yes, ma'am.
I have one more request, and I know we'll see more as we go forward. Staff, I'd like information on how many low-income housing projects we have taken on in the past year or year over year. I'd like to see basically a Pareto, and it may be 5 years, of how the numbers look in the city of Winston-Salem. And how many of those projects have we provided assistance / funding of some sort to? You don't have to say how much, just if we either provided it or didn't. Okay, thanks.
Do we have a motion?
You say to move it forward
Yeah, to move
without
forward.
recommendation. And maybe in the meantime, we'll get the information that we need.
Okay, good. We have a motion to move forward without recommendation and also request staff to provide us with information by the meeting. Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Abstain.
I abstain.
We have 2 in favor, none opposed, and 2 abstentions. So we will move forward, and it will be on our general agenda, which is next Monday night at 7 o'clock.
And Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
ma'am.
may I just say, by us moving it to the council, it does not mean that I'm saying I'm for it or
Yeah.
against it. We're just trying to get it so we can get some action.
Okay? Yes, ma'am.
One more comment again. When we get these things in the package that are time sensitive, they're time stamped really, and now we're up against the wall as to make a decision. I don't feel comfortable with that. Again, I feel like, and it is my duty at that point not to support it because I wasn't educated to make the right decision. So again, I don't know whether it was the developers remiss, whatever. I personally think things like that need to be noted to us when we read through this information. And I did see it. I'm like Councilmember Montgomery. It's not in my ward. But I was like, some of these items, I'm like, okay, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. Maybe somebody else has. But it makes it quite difficult for us to make these types of financial decisions based on what is happening in the world and happening economically still with the state and us. So moving forward, Chair, I am requesting again that when these things come to us in this package on Thursday, there needs to be some indication that all information is not received or certain information is missing. There needs to be a box that says that. Because when you get this and you go like, okay, what else is to this? And it's not even in my ward, it's in his, and he didn't even know.
Good point. It would be nice, and I would say this applies to just, in general, any things that come to us. If there is a time sensitivity, you could certainly
need
put
to
it in
know
the
it.
document that, because we had one, I think it was the pass-through money on the various organizations. We had to get it in by the 15th of April or whenever it was. I don't remember the exact date, but that'd be very helpful for us. Okay.
If I could just take a moment to address that. We have heard you very clearly in the past regarding having adequate time to review information. This item was one that came to us at the last minute. And we, as staff, would have had to make a decision not to bring it to you or bring it to you with what we had because of the urgency to get it to you. But we clearly have heard that you would desire to have information as early as possible, and we will make every effort to do so, and I apologize for the lateness of this item.
Would you like to say something else? Yes.
I would like to take the full blame for obviously not contacting the councilman first. As I said, North Carolina just let us know about this on April 7th. It took about 2 weeks to put together the information to know that it would work. Then we contacted Richie and Mellon 2.5 weeks ago. 2 weeks, and they worked great. And so it's on my shoulders that it came in late, and I apologize for that. As I said, this is the first step that allows us to now do the detailed underwriting. We will share that with you, just like we did at Forest Ridge, well in advance. Again, my apologies.
And let me say this, I don't think there's any disagreement with staff. I think this is a project worthy for the city to look at, and if the state didn't let us know till April the 7th that we can even go forward with it, that puts time pressure on everybody. But we just got to work hard, but it will be at council on Monday night.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as Mr. Finch, I would like to say that he has a very good project, and he's one of the investors who didn't get the money and not look back. His place is very nice. It's managed well, and I don't believe we hear any problems for the area over there. And when he was committed to say he was going to do a good job, he has. We have some who's taken the money, slums left here, and we don't know where they are. So, Mr. Finch, this does not have anything to do with you as a person. It's just that the time is what we're concerned with.
Okay. Thank you all. We will now move to C6. If you'll read that, please.
Resolution approving the fiscal year 2014-2015 operating memorandum between the City of Winston-Salem and the Risk Acceptance Management Corporation.
Ms. Saunders, could you give us, because you preach this same sermon once a year and we forget it, can you give us a reminder of what RAMCO does and
Yes.
how they do it and all that?
Risk Acceptance Management Corporation was created in 1988 solely for the purpose of paying general and auto liability claims for the City of Winston-Salem. Back in, I think it was 1988, we actually issued $15 million of debt and paid that back, and have also, we have a reserve balance to date of $30 million in cash.
How much?
$30 million.
$30 million, okay.
In the RAMCO fund. The city makes an annual payment to RAMCO to fund claims for auto and general liability.
And which city person runs RAMCO?
Risk management.
Risk
And Tony
management.
Baker is the risk management
Yes, just
director.
Tony, hello. And who is on the board? Because I know at a certain level the board
Sure.
approves it.
I'm the president. Ben Rao is the vice president. Greg Turner is a director, and Tony Baker is a director.
Okay, all
There are
right.
4 of us.
Okay. I hate to say I don't remember who pulled this. Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I was reading the report, and you've got 2 great Pareto's in here, one on the auto liability costs and one on the general liability costs. And on page 101, the general liability costs, we see a significant increase for 2014. And my concern is that, one, what are we doing to eliminate this cost and or educate our employees or whoever, and how do we hold ourselves accountable for things like this, like some of the items I was reading where we ran into people and backed up over people's stuff. You know, I'm just a taxpayer too, so how are we doing this to get better? Because we had such a nice trend line, and I bragged about it, but now I see this increase. So, what's driving it, and what are we doing to make it better?
I'm going to look to Tony to come talk to you about the what we do in safety and
Okay.
different things.
Mr. Baker, if you'll comment, please.
Yes, sir, I will do my best. On the general liability side, we have a safety incentive program pilot right now that we're doing with utilities as well as with sanitation. Obviously, that is primarily directed at lowering our workers' comp cost, but there is an ancillary benefit just to getting folks to think before they act really is the key message to that program, and we're hoping that that will generate into the general liability side as well. For this past year, the general liability numbers, specifically, unfortunately, utilities had 2 out of the ordinary but large claims. One was a water meter that was turned on incorrectly left on. Unfortunately, it was an upstairs apartment that flooded, 3 downstairs, or flooded, 3 units were flooded in that. They had been apartments that were just renovated, so it had to be re-renovated. And literally, they had just finished that week, and were having the water turned back on when this happened. Obviously, there were some conversations with the employees that were there. I can't tell you if there's any disciplinary action taken by utilities, but we very clearly pointed out to the employees of what needs to happen when they turn a meter on. They need to be sure that the meter is turned off, that there's no water left running, when they leave the premises, to make sure there's nothing leaking inside. The other large claim that they had was a sewer backflow that was attributed to a faulty electrical switch, which I'm not sure that even routine maintenance would have discovered that this electrical switch was faulty, but when it went bad, it allowed the level in the pump station reservoir to rise without the pump turning on. And unfortunately, this house was below the elevation of that pump station, and it backflowed into that home. Because it was our switch, we had some defenses, but in reality, if it's our switch that goes bad and floods the home, we're likely going to take that claim. So it was 2 large claims that skewed the rest of the year, which otherwise looked to be a pretty good year as far as claims. And then, of course, we had our contractor, whose subcontractor had a death on one of our projects. We were dragged into the litigation because we were a property owner. We were able to resolve that claim for $20,000, which in terms of the wrongful death litigation was much, much less than what the contractor paid on the claim. But those are 3 claims that affected utilities this one year that did cause the general liability numbers to jump up much higher than we expected.
Can you address in 2010 you had, looks like Recreation had one big claim or several?
I believe that was we had the drowning. I think there's a note there at the bottom of the chart. We had a...
the drowning. I'm sorry. I've been missing
Yes,
that's not fine. Ms. Burke had a question on it.
Yes,
Mine
ma'am.
is an observation, not a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say to Councilmember Adams, in a meeting with the city manager and with Mr. Rao, I mentioned about the same thing. And I feel, though, city manager, even though what has been stated, I think the department's heads, we can do a better job. Because when taxpayers, and this is not anything new, we've talked about how they don't seem to understand that this is not free money out here. That we taxpayers who ride through the neighborhoods, ride watching them do their jobs, we see how they drive. So it's not anything new. It may not be as much, and it could have looked better had we not had 2 major things, but let us be clear. That's not satisfactory. And there are just some things we can tolerate and some things we're not. Mr. Chairman, as chairman of this finance committee and vice chair, I think it is your responsibility as you look at these things to monitor our money and watch it. And we need to have these things clearly stated and understood. Excuses, excuses. That's what we're not about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Adams?
Thank you. I just have one more request on this item. I would like to see, and I don't need to know names, I need to know what accountability was built into this of these employees. I don't need to know names and all of that. I just need to know that we had this many employees, and these were the things that they were held accountable for, whether it was something went in their file, whether they had some extra safety training or something like that, and corrective action as to ensure that it doesn't happen again. In business, that's what we do, and I need to see that those actions.
Mr. McIntosh had a question. Can I get you?
This is just a heads up, but one of the areas that we're losing employees in through attrition right now is small equipment operators as they get replaced with less trained people. I think that's something that we need to think about in terms of, is it better to pay them higher wages and retain them, or let them go and have to bring less skilled people in, which is going to affect our insurance rates.
Okay. Mr. Montgomery.
2 questions. One in terms of what was stated earlier in terms of the cash that exists in terms of as part of Ramco. How does that relate specifically in terms of what the payouts are in terms of and the liabilities that are there and that balance?
Well, the claims are actually paid out of that balance. The city makes an annual payment to Ramco. That's the fee for claims management. And then payments are actually made out of Ramco's books for claims.
Right. And so I think the thing I was getting to is more so is individuals from the perspective of who's running Ramco that are city employees, they're on the city's payroll and paid by the city of Winston-Salem.
That's correct.
The funds that are paid then to Ramco are specifically more so directed to the payments.
Most definitely.
And so if the fee is the same fee annually, or is it just based upon?
It increases 2% every year.
And so I think what I'm going to is if we're not paying out the claims at that level and we're still increasing that payment into it, I'm trying to understand over a period of time, how does all that balance out?
It's part of the contract that fee will increase every year, and it's a reserve. It's like our self-insurance for events, for claims that happen.
Right. And that was the point I was trying to get us to in looking at the largest payment and claims we have. And so if, just for us in terms of thinking about, is there a place that we get to that we say we believe that we built up our reserves to a specific place in this area? And what is that benchmark and what is that place that we believe we're at a sufficient place in terms of reserves on that? And that's something I think just as something to consider in that process.
Okay. This is a motion to approve the contract with Ramco for another year, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, likewise. Anybody with a good comment, we need to follow up on that. Okay, next one I have is C7.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase property, boiler machinery, and employee theft insurance from Surrey Insurance in the amount of $436,799.
I requested this one, and some of the other folks may have too. This is another type of insurance. This is for boilers.
This is our property insurance.
I guess my question is kind of tied to the previous discussion. We're paying out $400,000 a year for this premium. Is this not something we could either raise to a very high deductible and also self-insure and take some of that money and give it to Ramco? I guess tied to this, do we have many boiler claims? And if so, this isn't a type of insurance I'm familiar with. And so what does it insure and what are the claims and all that type of stuff?
Tell me, but it's truly our property.
I know what a boiler is, but
The boiler machinery comes with a standard property insurance. This is your all-hazard insurance for all buildings. We have roughly $900 million worth of buildings spread throughout the county, and of course that's what this insurance pays for. We have discussed in the past some type of retention, and we've looked at the math, but if you had a serious natural disaster that hit, the retention that you would need if you had multiple properties hit would be easily in the hundreds of millions of dollars, to rebuild those properties, which is why we've continued.
So does this cover, if let's say this building burned down, is this the insurance for it?
Yes, sir.
So you call it boiler, but it really doesn't have anything to do with boiler?
It's property boiler machinery, but it is property insurance is probably the better phrase.
Okay, so what we basically self-insure, as we just talked about, was really more liability and workman's comp.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
But not actually the property. We actually get a standard policy for that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to make a comment to the city manager. I do hope that we realize that this is a big business. The city is a big business. And I've said on more than one occasion, we must manage it and run it like a big business. And I would just like to know, in looking at businesses, how do we fit in with other businesses in this city? You don't have to tell me that now. I just want to know for my information, because we've seen it grow from a little business to a big business. Thank you.
I will say this, if in fact it is the general property insurance and we have close to $1 billion, $400,000 is a pretty inexpensive premium.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it in my head what I pay for from my house. I got to take a few zeros off there, but this sounds pretty reasonable. I mean, a lot, a lot. But I just prorate it. It's 5 cents per $100 value, so that's pretty darn inexpensive. Any other questions in this area?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. That's C7. I've got C8 next. If you'll read that, please.
Any particular one, or just?
I'd ask for that.
Okay, let's just do C.
There's several.
Let's just do A first. We'll start at the beginning. Or is that the one you want?
It was a general question.
Oh, general question. Well, why don't you ask the question? We'll see if we know what we need to read. How about that?
And this actually goes to the Parks and Rec side of the contract awards that are in there, in reference specifically to about installation time, particularly as it pertains to looking at some of our past installations, particularly looking at Rupert Bell and the time frame of some of the things that's been taken over there with the installation of that, and is what's caused some of those issues in terms of installation. Are we going to face the same thing with the recreation side here? Because I've gotten some calls and concerns about that. And are these
Is your question in terms of the timeliness in which it takes for the installations, and specifically Rupert Bell and some of the issues there?
Yes.
The contractor that installed we usually typically use a 6x18 vertical curve for our playground borders. It holds up much better than your typical plastic borders. The contractor subbed the work out, and because of the safety requirements that we use for our playground installations, it didn't meet the standard. So once we noticed that deficiency, we had the contractor go back out. We had to saw cut some concrete. They're addressing that. They're going to re-pour so that we have the appropriate safety clearance. Then we'll move forward with the safety surfacing and get the swings up.
Who absorbs that cost?
The contractor.
Okay. And so that was just you see that as an isolated issue, and not something with the other installations of this you don't foresee.
Right, correct. That's the first time out of all the playgrounds that we've done, we've had that issue. Typically, we require a certified playground safety installer to install the equipment. We worked with a few individuals that have done great jobs, some that have done poor jobs, and we typically continue to use the ones that do great jobs for us.
Okay. I have a question. In C8, in their 5 or 6 sections there, 3 or 4 have to do with playground equipment. Typically, on a purchasing item, we get a statement that says there were 5 bidders and this was the low bidder that met the specs, something like that. These don't read that way. These read much differently. You basically tell me who you awarded them to, and then we go into all sorts of complicated stuff. Jerry, if you want to try to address how you did this.
One of the things that maybe led to some of the delay is the way we had prepared these projects in the past. We did a purchase of the equipment and construction phase all together in an effort to try to accelerate this process, because frankly, we just are recently completing the construction plans and specifications. The playground equipment typically takes 6 to 8 weeks to get it in. So to keep the project moving, and what invariably would happen is the general contractor that was chosen would utilize the playground equipment that we were involved in making the selection of. So it was just one delay after another. So therefore, these particular playground equipment manufacturers and suppliers are available on a governmental cooperative purchasing program. Now, the city typically stays away from those because we want to show evidence that we've bid those types of equipment out ourselves. But in these particular cases, these are national joint cooperative purchasing agreements. And the advantage is if you have one set of playground equipment, you can obtain very competitive prices that we or our general contractor would not have the ability to obtain. Therefore, in the item, it references who we intend to order the equipment from, and in fact, we even referenced a possible savings that will be attributed to the city purchasing the playground equipment through these joint agreements. They follow all the required bidding laws that are available, and so in essence, that's one of the acceptable lost my word for methods of being able to award without going through the bidding process. It's allowed by general statute.
Okay, but it's one-stop shopping. Whoever does this is going to provide the equipment and install it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It would be helpful, since we've also got a thing on here under purchasing, if we could have a word if this is a women or minority company we're dealing with, stuff like that.
It is. It should be in the card.
Is it?
Each one of them at the back.
Well, I'm just looking at if you say it's in there, I'm on C8C for Washington Park. I don't have my reading glasses on here.
Right. I don't see it either, but I can.
Okay, I just have to pick the first one that's not on there, so, okay. So if you could just be sure, but I do appreciate your comments on how we're doing this, so we have an understanding of that. Thank you. Ms. Burke, did you have a question or
I'm
comment?
just going to tell them that Bowen Thomas Park is in the northeast, not the northwest.
Okay, you'll correct that for the final meeting. And I will say, as an aside, the one that was put in at Shafter Park, and I think we have a boat and dragon theme, it's been very, very well received. Excellent job. And I do have one other one, if y'all can bear with me since there are a number. I think it's 8F. It's the cameras that are going on the police chief, on the police.
Just thought.
The camera thing,
It is. It is.
There was, Chief, there were some issues raised. If an officer has a camera on, what's to prevent him if he happens to walk into the locker room or whatever? I mean, it seems like me there are some privacy issues on this. How are we going to address all that?
Yes, that is addressed in policy. Of course, you wouldn't run your camera if you're in the bathroom or some kind of private area.
But there's an easy way to cut them on and off?
Yes, the officer can control the on and off switch. It basically rests on his chest, so he can turn it on and off.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on anything in C8? If not, do I have a motion to approve these items?
Move for approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C8 is done. We will now go to C9.
Consideration of items relating to a contract for chiller installation at the Public Safety Center located in the North Ward. A, resolution awarding a contract for chiller installation at the Public Safety Center by Professional Air Systems, LLC, in the amount of $198,000, and B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
I think I had this one too, unless someone else had it. Just a quick question. We do have on the bond referendum to redo the public safety building. I trust that whatever chiller we're buying will fit in with the renovations. I see everybody nodding their head. Thank you very much. Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. C9 is done. We're now to C10. If you read that, please.
Resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County for grant funds to support the District Attorney's Domestic Violence Unit.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm the one asked for that. I'd just like to have a brief comment about it so we can understand what that is all about.
Ben, you want to comment on that?
Yes, Councilmember Burke. In the past, we have, the City Council has approved funding for the District Attorney's Office Domestic Violence Unit, and that's been handled through a contract between the city and the District Attorney's Office. I believe the Forsyth County Attorney's Office has now determined that because that unit is funded through the county and not through the state, that we actually have to have an interlocal agreement in place for the city to provide the funding to the domestic violence unit operation. And so this is simply to get that interlocal agreement in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At one time, I think through our Public Safety Committee, City Manager, maybe we'll have a little more of what it actually does and how we work with them. That would be my purpose for this. But in the meantime, I move for approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to second, and I would recommend that we put this on the agenda for public safety at whatever time you can get it on there if it's not on there already, because it certainly falls under their preview. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. C10 is approved. C11 I had actually approved on the consent level. We're now down to C12. If you read that one, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the reallocation of funding for enhancements on the Salem Creek Connector project.
I think I pulled this one. I have no idea why.
I didn't show it.
Does anyone have any questions on it?
No.
If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Opposed likewise. C13, I had approved it earlier. C14, if you'll read that one, please.
Consideration of items related to the Safe Routes to School Sidewalk Project. A, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the Safe Routes to School Sidewalk Project. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
Mr. Chairman, I asked for that to be pulled, and I felt that someone from public safety should say something about this so they can see that the city is working along with it, because it was a TV program talking about getting children to school safe. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah.
I'll ask Mr. Turner to talk about it in a little more detail, but we are very committed to working with the school system and the community to try to provide a safe pedestrian access for our young children as they transverse the streets to go to school.
And I will say this, in the past, we've also sent schools letters asking about how safe they think it is for their children walking back and forth on sidewalks. We've been always concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mr. Turner, could you comment on what the Safe Routes to School Sidewalk project is?
It started as a federal program under Safety Lou, which was the previous federal funding allocation program, and it basically provides funding, 100% federal money that comes through the state to the city for improvements that would allow or improve the access for students to get to middle and elementary schools by pedestrians or by bike. And there's $500,000 allocated in this program to the city that'll be reimbursable as we do the projects. The money comes, as I said, from the feds through the state, and then it'll come to the city.
Do we apply every year? Do we have a...
Yes.
And do we get money every year?
I think we get money every other year, but it's regularly received by the...
But we're very familiar with the program, where we do try to take advantage as we can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. That passes. We're now on to C15, if you'll read that one, please.
Consideration of items relating to the second Strategic Highway Research Program. Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the SHRP2 C20 Freight Demand Modeling and Data Improvement Implementation Assistance Program. B, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation for the SHRP2 program for the SHRP2 C20 Freight Demand Modeling and Data Improvement Implementation Assistance Program. And C, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for fiscal year 2013-2014.
Okie dokie. Who had this one?
I may have pulled this one because I felt for information
Okay.
we need to know. Just
Thank you very much.
could Mr. Turner just take a brief?
Yeah. Can you just comment a little bit what the program is, the Strategic Highway Research Program?
Certainly. As part of the regions, meaning the Winston-Salem urban areas, travel demand model, which is used for air quality conformity determination, which then is used for making sure that we are eligible for state and federal funds, we have to do a computer analysis of all the modes of transportation. One of the modes that is evaluated as a result of recent changes is freight. And so what this item is doing is authorizing the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation to do the freight component of the travel demand modeling under a contract with the city. Then we'll submit our invoice from them to NCDOT, who will reimburse us $150,000, 100% money.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. I'm going to move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. I had C16 done earlier. We're now down to C17. If you read that one, please.
Consideration of an item relating to Federal Transit Administration funds for job access reverse commute, Section 5307. A, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into grant agreements with subrecipients and pass through Federal Transit Administration funds for job access and reverse commute, Section 5307 funds for the Winston-Salem urban area. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
Yes.
Ms. Adams.
Did you have one? Did you pull it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
My question on this is actually, it was even tied into 16B as well. But my question on it is the actual individual organizations that are getting a lot of the actual money in with these programs. There's no numbers associated this to say who they serve, how long they've been serving, and what they're doing. And so that's the question I have in terms of how do we ensure that they're actually doing what it is that the dollars come down to say they're doing, because that's nothing associated with what I've seen in what we have.
We'll bring a report. We'll try to get you something for your Thursday package.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve? I don't hear a motion. Do you want to hold any committee? Is there a time sensitivity to this one?
I'm not aware of one.
Well,
I don't mind holding it because that's for me. I want to know that before I
Okay.
say that. But if we approve
problem.
16B, which in my opinion is tied directly to this, and it asserts budget change and that kind of stuff that's in that number. So if we're going to hold, then I think we should hold both of those.
Okay, do we have any, and I know we'll just, unless I hear disagreement, we will rescind 16 and hold 16 and 17 in committee. Dan, you're looking at me
Yes.
funny. Go ahead.
I just had a question for Mr. Turner, if I may. Mr. Turner, have these items gone through the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, or are they to come in the future?
I think there are two come.
I did not recall the specifics of these items, although similar ones have come through on a routine basis. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. How about if we could have a motion to hold 16 and 17 in committee that way?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. I'm now down to, I had C 18 and 19 approved in the consent area. By the way, is it just me, or are we saving money on air conditioning in here? Okay, thank you, Lee. You can cut it off when public safety gets in here. But.
No.
Okay. First off, thank everyone we had a big agenda, and now we're getting to the agenda, the rest of the agenda. We will now go to the general agenda, and we will go through these items one at a time, and we will start with G1, if you'll read that, please.
Consideration of items relating to an economic development loan to 2H Investments Corporation, DBA The UPS Store on Liberty Street, located in the East Ward. Resolution approving an economic development loan to 2H Investments Corporation, DBA The UPS Store on Liberty Street, in the amount of $100,000, and B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
Mr. Page, you want to comment on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This item is a request from 2H Investments Incorporation doing business at the UPS Store, owned by Miss Amy Ruth Hallett, who's actually standing up for me if you have any questions for her, and requesting a loan of $100,000 to assist with opening a third location. Already owns a location in Lexington, another location at 380 Norwood Street, looking at opening a third location, which would be on Liberty Street between 5th and 6th on the west side of Liberty Street, in a building that actually fronts on Liberty Trade and 6th Street. The assistance that she's asking for is roughly 23% of the total project cost for startup, which is about $427,000. Will create up to 5 full-time jobs with salaries ranging from $11 to $18 over that 5-year period. And city funds would be used to fund hardware, software, and leasehold improvements.
Okay. Miss, is it Hallett? Am I pronouncing right?
Yeah.
Do you have any opening comments you'd just like to make, and then we'll ask any questions we may have?
In general, when I started this business plan and started really looking at the service area, I had to prove to the UPS Corporation that it made economic sense to open the UPS store. And in general, our customer bases are with a household income of over $20,000 will shop at our store twice a year. Household incomes over $50,000, of which there are 6 zip codes right now with that criteria within a 2-mile radius of this new location, are showing over $50,000 will shop every month at our store. Okay? Therefore, I had to make sure that the demand for our services were viable and would make the business plan profitable.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments? Ms. White, you had your hand up first.
Yes. There was, I don't know if it was a UPS or FedEx store that opened in the Gateway area. I'm sorry, my back is to you. But, and I guess because of lack of business, finally folded. And I just wondered.
I believe you're speaking of the Marshall Street store.
Well,
Is that
it would-
it was on
Yeah.
Marshall Street?
Yeah, that store was originally opened, and its intent was to service Winston-Salem State and Salem College. Unfortunately, as we're learning, and as the UPS stores in general are learning, the model proves best when you put us on campus, not when we're outside of campus. You'll see that the UPS stores are making a big push throughout the university community, and in those cases, and I can only tell you that future talks are in way to be on campuses rather than outside of campuses. This store is designed to service the small business community of the downtown area, as well as to offer the associates and employees of the new businesses there a place to do quick drop-offs and quick shipping. What was very key to this location on Liberty Street is it has parking. Not only does it have one 10-minute spot right out in front of it, but it has 3 spots that will be designated for the UPS store patrons to be used to bring their packages in to ship.
Thank you. Ms. Adams, if you have a question.
Yes. Nice to meet you, Ms. Hallett.
Nice to meet you.
I noticed G1A on page 7, the memo from Andy Dreyfus, chair of the Small Business Loan Committee, says that, quote unquote, although Ms. Hallett's business plan is well crafted and her operating results as a UPS franchise have been very solid to date, her request did not meet the needs-based criteria of our program. Therefore, her loan request was not approved. Mr. Page.
Yes, ma'am. The small business loan program has specific criteria. It's really a second chance loan program. The net worth of the business can't be above X amount. The business has to be denied by a primary lender. So this request, similar to the one that we considered several months ago from like the Chronicle, does not meet the guidelines of that program. So that's why we see these types of requests that we've had in the past where they don't meet. These are for businesses that are expanding as opposed to businesses that are starting up, which is the typical small business loan program that we see.
And part of that matrix report that I'm asking for as to how many of these loans we make, where are we right now, that I asked for earlier. I'd like, again, to see things like that, like this in a category, the categories, this business did not qualify for the small business loan based on need. Therefore, it fulfilled this requirement. Again, what I'm asking for, as you know, is information. We approve these loans every month, and I need to start seeing running totals just like a business. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Montgomery had a question.
A couple. I'll start with my question, and that was kind of piggybacks off of Councilman Adams in the question of the need portion, and it goes to the question: did you look at loans in just from bank loans in that side? What was the driving force of looking from the city's perspective?
Okay, twofold. One is the UPS store. When they open a downtown location, they want to make sure that the city is going to support that location. And they specifically asked me if I have gone and I went to the Citizens Committee first, anticipating in all actuality to be in front of the Finance Committee. So it is not a surprise that they turned down the loan, given that had they given me the loan, it would have been 85% of their entire budget for the year. So I think that in itself scared them away. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is I've been working with PNC Bank, which is the old RBC Bank, and they are working on a loan package that would match the city funds. Okay? Given the new banking regulations and banking rules, the way that loans are made to franchises has tightened significantly since 2008. I'm not sure many of you might not be aware of that. Before 2008, you could actually get loans on a brand. You can no longer get loans on a brand. As Mr. Page has alluded to, it's loans on software, equipment, and hardware, and so forth. But yet I have to, as the franchisee owner, pay for the brand. So that's part of the whole package here.
Okay, and then my comments on this is, one, Ms. Hallett, actually, I heard probably several months ago that you'd be coming this way from some others, so I was anticipating this coming, particularly because it's in the East Ward. And the location that's being chosen, this I think is a great place as we look at the revitalization of that part of downtown. I know that the owner of the building and some others are trying to work out some things in a larger development, and I hope that goes forward with the other pieces of that puzzle. But I think that this is a service I think that will benefit the downtown area and will help in that process as we look at the revitalization of that north part of downtown. So I think it's something that's going to be well needed and well used in the area, and something I support.
Thank you.
Did anyone else? Jeff, I'm sorry, I missed you.
I want to piggyback on Councilmember Montgomery's statement there. It does sort of fill in the list of needs that downtown residents have been talking about for years, so I think that's a very positive thing. My question was, did you approach the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership? They do have leasehold improvement loans available, and I was wondering if you had looked at them.
I was guided to first go to the Citizens Committee, then come here, was my guidance, so I've been following that. Okay, this project is, as we said, we're hoping to get the loans secured and be able to start the demolition of the space so that we can then have it up and running by Christmas.
They do have a fund program that is specifically for leasehold improvements, so you might want to consider contacting Jason Thiel.
I would appreciate that. I'm sure Mr. Page can give me the information.
Page, do you know much about that program? Can you comment?
Last time I heard, they were out of money, but we can check with them.
Okay.
Move fast.
Okay, go fast. Let me see you guys.
A couple questions. You are a franchisee, so
yes.
From UPS. How involved are they in it? Because I have a lot of respect for UPS.
Well, they're very involved. They get, first of all and foremost, they get 8.5% of everything that walks in the door. Okay, so that's part of being part of the family. They do require me under my franchisee agreement that I must buy from their suppliers, so that my standard of quality of the box you buy is the shipping box. It's not a Home Depot box that's going to break apart with your college stuff in it. Okay, it will survive the 4-foot drop test and so forth. The every quarter I get audited. I get secret shopped every month, either via phone or personally. Okay, and I get these reports and audits are submitted, and should I fall below 50%, then you're put on you call it the naughty franchisee list, and if you stay on that list, you do lose your franchise. But to date, all of my associates, as well as myself, we've had a 99 percentile ranking. We've yet to break the 100 point. I will tell you, we seem to always miss that one little step, but we've been definitely meeting the model. They have quarterly meetings with the franchisees, and we also have a co-op program that all of the 22 franchisees in the Piedmont Triad area belong to, and we support that, and I do lead that myself.
Okay, a couple more questions. You do have 2 other stores, which I gather are separately incorporated, or?
No, they're all incorporated under 2H Investments. Okay. They're DBAs.
Okay.
They're separate DBAs. 2H Investments is a North Carolina C corporation.
Okay. Without getting too much into your personal business, how are they doing? Because you've owned those for a little while.
How are they doing? I would say very well. Okay. My sales year over year since I purchased Knollwood were up 22%. Okay. I received an award for taking the largest spike in sales of an existing store in 1 year.
Okay. One other thing, and I've talked to Mr. Page about this already, one thing I would like to see that was not in the information we were given, he's going to get it for us, is a balance sheet. You do have income statement. One thing with balance sheet is really your financial strength, and you are showing some first and second year losses, and I want to be sure that you have enough capital to get you through that.
The balance sheet that I showed Mr. Page was only relative to this store as a standalone store, but I can combine it with the other stores. You're correct.
Yeah, if you would mind,
the reason I'm able to do this is the other 2 stores are funding themselves. So the debt I have, I paid cash for the Knollwood store. I'm cash financing the Lexington store. It's doubling its size right now to 2,000 square feet. And this store will become my showcase store at almost 4,000 square
Well,
feet.
if you wouldn't mind getting with Mr. Page, I would
Yep.
appreciate that.
I can do that.
Ms. Burke?
I introduced the MWBE, so when I see women moving forward, I just say, stand up, women. It's past your time.
Yes.
And I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ms. Hallett, this will go in front of the full council this coming Monday.
Yes.
And if there's any way you can get us the consolidated balance sheet, and I would like a pro forma at least 1 or 2 years out as well.
Yeah. And did you want a consolidated of all three
Consolidated,
stores?
yeah.
Okay.
Okie dokie, that's G1. We will now move to G2, please. If you'll read that one.
Consideration of items relating to a loan to the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem. A, resolution authorizing a loan to the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem for the former Brown Elementary School in the amount of $319,175. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
Mr. Brooks, why don't you give us a 2-minute synopsis? And Larry, I see you in the back. If we have questions, don't go yet.
The Housing Authority of Winston-Salem is in the process of purchasing the Brown Elementary School, which is located at 1125 Highland Avenue. For those of you who may be familiar with the area, it's the school building that's right across the street from Shiloh Church. They are requesting assistance from the city to help with that acquisition, which would be a first phase of funding. The first phase project cost total $439,175, of which Halls can contribute $100,000 to the project, which would leave $319,175 that they are requesting assistance from the city. There is a $20,000 amount that's included in that for maintenance of the property and mowing the property. We have not included that as part of that because we believe that's something that the city can do without having it a part of this request. They intend to construct 120 units of multifamily housing for the elderly. The total project cost is estimated to be $12 million. Of this amount, I mentioned it would be the first phase. There is a second phase, which would be the demolition of the project and some other costs, which would be $381,000. They would not need that money until 2015. So currently, the request is for the 319. If council approves this item, the loan could be made from housing finance funds. If Halls is successful in getting the tax credits, because they are applying for low-income housing tax credits, it would be paid back as a part of the tax credit financing. If not, it would be a 5-year deferred payment loan, of which Halls has requested payment would start in 2015.
Okay, Mr. Montgomery, you had a question?
And Mr. Woods is here if you would like to hear any comments from him.
Okay, all right, let's see what questions we have first.
Well, it was on this item. I know there was some additional questions that came up here recently from the Housing Authority in reference to this item, and wondering what that conversation got to from city attorney and where we are in staff's position.
Excuse me. From Friday until about 20 minutes ago, it was finally decided that what staff had presented in the CARF, Halls is okay with. The only request that we have is that the loan would start in 2015. So they are in agreement with the 5-year deferred payment loan starting in 2015 if they aren't successful in getting the tax credits.
And then the question, well, not necessarily a question, but the conversation on this is this property is in the larger Cleveland Avenue master plan area that runs from beginning there at Martin Luther King and goes all the way back through Cleveland Avenue homes across. And so this property is in that area and is a part of that larger picture of development. Now, with the number, with the acquisition costs, and then with the subsequent requests at a later date, out of a 12 million, I didn't do the math. What percentage is that? Is that about? Is that 600,000, 684? What percentage is that of 12 million? Somebody help me. 5%. 5%. So before, when I was wondering in terms of looking at that number, in terms of what you're looking at in other projects, that 5% number, I think, is not out of the way in terms of what we've done and looked at. And overall, as I have a plan in terms of things that I'd like to, this is one of those properties that's on that list of things that I think will help. The only thing I have mentioned to the Housing Authority about this property that I would like to add in language to this is specific language around the building structure, the historic portions of the building, and the main structure of that building, seeking that the Housing Authority would seek to find a way to retain that structure as best they could. That means the demolition of the trailers and the other addition that's out further to help that construction, but to find a way to do that. And if they are not successful in being able to find that would need to come back to council to be able to allow for approval for them to demolish any other portions of that property. And from my understanding, that they was sufficient, that was okay with the Housing Authority.
Ms. Burke?
Have you finished? That's a very good plan that you just finished discussing, but I would not want them to be limited. But I saw Ms. Redmond shaking her head that it would be okay what you're suggesting. But if it gets to the place that it's too complicated, maybe some type of monument could be put there to show the history of that, because it is a very historical place. And also I see this as being positive with the kind of money that HUD is investing in that particular neighborhood. And then when you see Kennedy School so close, what's happening over there, and also I think will help those homes to be better for people to live in, because there's still some good housing stock there.
Okay. Mr. Woods, could you come up a second? Just we'll get you on the record. And if you'll give your name and address for the record, please.
Larry C. Woods, Chief Executive Officer, Housing Authority, City of Winston-Salem. Address is 500 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay. First off, confirming what Mr. Montgomery is asking, that we put a condition in here that you maintain the historical portion of the building, and if you can't, that you would come back to us for...
Yes, we've had that discussion with Mr. Montgomery, and we've said that we would take a look at several different uses, and one of them would be adaptive reuse, that possibly we could actually increase the number of senior housing in part of the adaptive reuse, or it could be used as some type of senior building, recreational building, etc. We won't know that until we actually get into the building and actually start taking a look at the exterior structure and interior structure.
Okay. And I had a question, and in our book, it looks like in 2014 you're purchasing the property. 2015 you're dealing with asbestos and paint, underground storage tanks, things of that sort, maybe some demolition. And then I guess in 2016 you're looking for a fairly large amount of money, this $12 million, to really build what you want to build.
That's right. Yes, the second phase of our request will be tied to the award of the tax credits. Okay. So if we're not awarded in 2015, we would then be reapplying in 2016. So whenever we get the tax credits, we would then come back to this body and ask for the second part of the money.
Right now you're just acquiring the property, basically.
We're just acquiring the property, and as soon as we receive the tax credits, we would then repay the initial loan 100% as we move forward.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Burke?
I was just going to say there are still some descendants of Brown Woodland family, and you may want to get in contact with the Brown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Montgomery?
And I knew there was something else I had on this one. It was about I was made aware that I was thinking wrongly today. It was my original understanding that BB&T had stated that they were willing to write down the loan, but I was understood to say today that that was not the case, that they decided that they were not willing to write down the loan.
That's correct. We have been negotiating with them with the approval of the Shiloh Baptist Church if we could get some type of consideration, the fact that this was going to be what we thought they would look at it as a community revitalization project. But after getting in contact with them in discussion several months, they said they were unable to write the loan down at this point.
Did they give any general reason on that? Because if they walk in that building today, they would not get.
I'm with you 100%. But what they did appreciate the fact is that we were putting up our own money of $100,000 that we just wasn't asking for the city money.
Can I ask, and on this item specifically, and I don't want to hold up any longer, but it would be my thought, and I would ask, and I'm going to look over here to my left-hand side, that we have some more conversation and see if we can't pull on some more things there, because I truly believe that they foreclose on that building, they do whatever on that property, they are not going to get that out of that property because of the current condition that's in. And I don't believe that the city should be the one or the housing authority to pay that price for it when it's not going to get that in the marketplace. And so it will be my desire, which is something I'm 100% about, 100% support, but I'm going to ask the committee if we may hold this for a month to ask some of our individuals who may be sitting around this table to make some phone calls on our behalf on this item.
Okay, Ms. Burke had a comment.
I was going to say maybe the mayor would step there. I do my business account.
Made my note.
I'm going to say this. I do a business account with them.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of business east of 52 with them. And I do read. I need a conversation with Mr. Kelly anyway, because I do have some concerns with BB&T. And I would hope that they would be more sensitive and understand this.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Yes, I'd like, I got a couple of things. As we move to the next item, there is a financing commitment for construction, something like a markup sheet. I'd like to see something that we put in place also when it comes to these types of requests from the city, from staff. Mr. Page, you know how you bring us a markup when we are getting ready to entertain economic development. I'd like to see some kind of markup for these type loans and requests that are coming. Goes back to kind of what I was asking for prior. Also, I see where I agree with Councilmember Montgomery of holding this, but I see on where they said their second phase of funding is for the hazard abatement. What's the difference in brownfield in this? What's the difference? They're talking about lead-based paint, underground storage tanks, and whatever they find on the property.
This would be a Brownsfield.
And I'm wondering, would not the federal government have something, or the state or somebody to help with that, or is it left up to us? And if it's left up to us, I'd like to see where it is in our policies to do that. Because I've had other companies and nonprofits and people to ask me about businesses or things they want to do, such as create housing or whatever, but the property has issues, and it's like they didn't know what to do, so they just kind of let it go. So I'd like to see some more information on that.
And it's actually it's a competitive process, but we can get you some information on that.
All right.
Does anyone know how much the BB&T loan is on this property?
$375,000.
What's in there? Okay. So without objection, I'm here. We're going to hold this in committee for a month.
Yeah, and I'd just like to make one other comment on that. And does this cause any issue, Mr. Woods, in holding this?
Not at this time, no.
All right,
Okay.
and then the other part on it is those dollars that's on the second phase of this would be included in the city's participation in the LIHTC program in terms of that would be our participation, because with that program you have to show that you have the local municipality participation, but it's specific that it would take care of those dollars. And also on the Brownsville side, if I'm not mistaken, when that came before the last time, I requested staff, and I think they reached out to the people that work with that on us for looking at the Brown Elementary School property and the Union Station property, that we'd had some conversation with that, but I don't think we were awarded any dollars in that. Is that correct?
We've applied. I don't think any have been announced yet. I don't know what the status is, but we've
Okay,
applied.
but that was something that we did request.
So
Also, the state of North Carolina operates a reimbursement program for underground storage tanks, and we informed Halls of this, and they did make an inquiry, and they would not be eligible for the reimbursement on the underground storage tanks. We have not looked at the other hazardous parts, but that part we did explore, and they would not be eligible for it.
Okay, so with objection, we're holding this in committee for a month to get some questions answered. We'll now go to G3, and Mr. Taylor, you've just walked in. We've had a lot to do here, but we only have 3 more items under general, so I think we'll be finished in 5 minutes or so.
Thank you.
G3, please.
Consideration of items relating to permanent financing for public housing. A, resolution authorizing permanent financing for 30 units of public housing known as Camden Station Apartments in the amount of $350,000. And B, ordinance amending the project budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2013-2014.
Okay, Mr. Brooks, good thing you didn't sit down because you're right back up again.
Yes.
Can you give us a little rundown on this one, please?
Yes, this item is a request for permanent financing for up to $350,000 for the development of 30 units of public housing to be known as Camden Square. It would be located roughly at Cleveland and 12th and Cleveland. There were formerly 2 older apartment complexes there that Halls acquired and demolished, so you have 2 pads that are sitting there. So they intend to construct some public housing units and have requested assistance from the city to do so. It would be 14 one-bedroom, 14 two-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units, and 2 3-bedroom units with washers and dryers, and you have some other amenities that they will have there. The total project cost is projected to be $3.9 million, and the other sources of funds would be a HUD replacement housing factor fund, a bank loan, a Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta, affordable housing subsidy grant, and Hall's equity. When staff was approached with this, we looked at if council decided to make this loan, that funds could come from the housing finance funds, and it would be a loan due on sale or transfer of the property. However, since that time, Halls has notified us, and Mr. Montgomery, back to your earlier comments about the conversations we've had over the weekend, Halls has advised that if this project is to move forward, they would need to have the $350,000 as a grant and not a loan. And Mr. Woods can explain that further.
Okay. Mr. Woods, why don't you comment on that, since that was important.
Thank you once again. This project was originally submitted through an application requesting home and CDBG funds. We were subsequently informed that it was going to be pulled and considered for other funding options. We were not aware that it would be a loan. The project, as Mr. Brooks stated, is 30 public housing units. It is part of our step-up housing concept. Our goal is to work with working families who are low income with 65% or less of AMI, and the goal is to grow them out of local, state, and federal subsidies so they can move back into mainstream. This will be our second project of that nature. Oak, the 10th at Oak was our first one. We also have 6 units reserved for the homeless population who are working currently with the Bethesda Center, and they'll provide us with some referrals. The problem we're having right now is we had to close on this project, at least the financial closing took place on May 9th, and that was due to lock in the BB&T funding, as well as to preserve our replacement housing factor. We had to have that obligated before that time lapse would be expiring. Under the financial closing, HUD has the first declaration of trust on the property. BB&T has the first lien on the mortgage. The Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta also has a lien on their AHAP. If there was another loan placed on this property, we would not meet the underwriting criteria and debt coverage ratio required by BB&T Bank. That's why we're asking for consideration for a grant on this project and not a loan. And I'm prepared to answer any questions. And I would like to apologize to the Finance Committee and to city staff for any confusion that this may have brought about. But this was last minute, and we had to get legal advice before I could speak with Mr. Brooks later early this afternoon to try to get this straightened out.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Mr. Montgomery?
And so, and it's been my experience over the last 5 years that even with some of these projects that over time that many of these have ended up being grants, but I feel in terms of it having that lingering piece is a way for the city to make sure that whoever we're dealing with actually performs the service that's asked of that. If this is done as a grant in this form, and I don't know from a legal perspective, is there any way for the city to still ensure that the performance actually happens over a period of time? Because again, when we do these in the past, we oftentimes come back and we've seen that we've done forgiveness on these, but in my mind, having that note kind of holds over that sense of, yeah, we want to make sure that you do what it is that we want to do. And again, this is also a part of the larger Cleveland Avenue Homes master plan area, and we just refinanced last year Mr. Carr's loan with Summit Square, which he was able to go in and redo many of the apartment units there, and I think that this will be an added piece which sits right on the edge of that property. But I just want to make sure that...
Just to give you an idea, since we put together our master plan, there has been Holland Homes, which is part of First Baptist Church. They actually renovated and rehabbed Holland Homes at a tune of about $5 million. Right next to that is our Oaks at 10th. We're putting in about $4.7 million. As you stated, that George Carr of Summit Square is now refinanced his, and his is almost about $1.5 million. This would then, these are all beside one another, going right up straight Cleveland Avenue. It will change the face of Cleveland Avenue, and we think it's a way of revitalizing the area and stimulating other private economic development and help stabilizing that community.
Okay, and on the grant side of that, then how we keep our...
Add performance conditions to the grant agreement.
Go back to Ms. Adams.
Yes, I applaud all the efforts that the Housing Authority is doing to improve the vitality of our urban core. One of the things that I hope that is built into this, we can put the bricks and mortar up. Again, I saw your program that you've implemented or partnership you're working to ensure the success of this project. But I also would like to see, and maybe it's there, I just haven't seen it because I'm driving through so fast. You did, Chief, he's gone, okay. Aesthetics. Mr. Woods, you know how I feel about landscaping and appearance.
Mm-hmm.
You can put a building up, but if you don't put some grass or some trees or some shrubs or some flowers and something, people just kind of look at it just what it is. It's just a building. I think that's the intricate part of building community and revitalizing it. So Councilmember Montgomery, we do that all the time, don't we?
Okay.
Councilmember Montgomery, I'm hoping that part of the Cleveland, I've seen it, but making sure, just like Martin Luther King, the aesthetics are there and that it looks just like other places in the city versus the urban core.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Brooks, you next.
I was going to mention when Mr. Woods mentioned Holland Homes, First Baptist Church should be commended.
Yeah.
And you see the appearance you're talking about from the curb to the back. It's beautiful, the
Yes, it is.
landscape, and it's very clean and comfortable.
And well maintained.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Bessie, you had a question or
Yes,
comment?
thank you. I'm used to seeing these and evaluating them as loan requests. I wondered if Mr. Brooks could give us a history of similar projects that have been handled as grants.
Good question. I had the same question, yeah. Or Mr. Brooks or whoever.
Mr. Brooks.
Do we have a precedent for grants?
Not that I'm aware of on these types of projects. Of course, if you recall, 3 departments were merged together, I think, in March of 2011. BITS Housing Development was responsible for these types of programs, which was a standalone department prior to that time. So Mellon Parker is here. She may be able to address prior to the merger. But since we merged, no, we have not had any types of these loans where we have brought to you for grants. And again, I apologize for this. because the request for the grant came in after we submitted our package to you all last week.
Mr. Bessie, you still have the floor.
Yes. Ms. Brooks, how much time did you have in which to evaluate this as a request for a grant, not a loan?
I actually got the call for the grant Friday afternoon around 3:30.
Do you feel that you've had adequate opportunity to evaluate the merits of the request compared to other possible similar requests that could come forward in the grant category?
No, from that perspective, no.
I'm somewhat uncomfortable. I'm not on the committee.
Mr. Woods, on the previous item, we requested for a month's continuance. Is there an issue here if we continue it a month? I think it would be to your advantage to do that.
Yes, we will. Yes.
Reading the tea leaves, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the record, I disagree. And the reason I disagree with that is because the Housing Authority, in my opinion, is we as a council appoint all the members of the board, and well, not all the members, but appoint a good deal of members of the board. And in my opinion, the public housing and affordable housing has to be bought down. You cannot do real affordable housing, in my opinion, without having another partner at the table. And a commitment, in my opinion, to the entire Cleveland Avenue homes project. I would ask this council, this committee, and this council as we move forward. And I know that the Housing Authority is pressed in terms of really moving on this project. And I know from a loan perspective, this has been something that has been discussed for a period of time. And I would like to understand in terms from a merit what changes in the understanding of trying to understand this as a grant rather than a loan, which the grant was going to be deferred until the property exchanged hands, which when you're dealing with the Housing Authority, from my sense, the majority of their properties are not changing hands anytime soon. So in my opinion, there wasn't a whole lot that would have changed because we probably weren't going to see at recouping those dollars anytime soon. So to me, I'm not sure what changes in reviewing. And I understand the concern of timeline, but what are we asking staff to review more that they have not reviewed? Because I would think that they've looked at it more stringent under a loan perspective than they would under a grant. But I don't want to, I know we're going a long time, but yeah. I think you spend more time, and we've seen that in the questions we've asked about grants, more time looking at it, vetting it as a loan than you do from a grant perspective. So I'm not sure what we ask staff to look at.
Let me offer a couple comments. First off, the city council has zero control over who goes on the housing authority. The mayor appoints them. We do not approve them.
That's true.
We have zero control. And I will say, in past administrations, not anything to do with Mr. Joines, but there have been issues at that level because of that. But that's history. I guess I would like, and part of this may be a culmination of frustration. It seems like everything we've dealt with today has been at the last minute, et cetera, et cetera. And we're not talking about little bits of money. I, for example, have a thought. If we've got to give a grant, would the city want to take an equity interest in the property? And then we may or may not. And there's advantages both ways and disadvantages both ways. But I do think, again, this may be the straw that breaks the camel back, but this is the third or fourth item we've looked at today, but which we had been asked to make major commitments with virtually no time for the staff to review them. And in this case, I think Mr. Bassey has asked, even though he's not on the committee, has asked a legitimate question: do we have a history of forgiveness of grants? And if we don't, you've asked for some conditions. Well, what would those conditions be, and how can you do it? Type thing. Now, I'm hearing you can live with another month.
It make it very tight because we have closed on the loan, but I would say that to undo it, to put someone else with another equity position, we had 7 attorneys that we had to work with. It was not easy to to get where we are right now. Again, it would make things very tight. The board has approved us to move forward with a general contractor. We did do a solicitation. We did interview. We got about 5 bids in. We have made it the selection. We have some other pieces that have to go forward, but...
May I make a compromise to the committee that we move it forward without a recommendation, which will give staff time to evaluate this new item that we've asked to do a grant versus a loan. That way it would be at the council and we would have time for the staff to get us some more information.
That's be fine with me, but I was just going to say if any of the council people, if you have questions, then the city manager, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Page, make sure we're going to answer these questions. But Mr. Chairman, this is what I wanted to say. When it comes to housing, the city of Winston-Salem has depended on the housing halls to provide housing. We can go back and look at the history. We have a big investment of tax dollars in public housing. But if we don't have someone providing the housing, then we would have people living in conditions that would just be so poor. And also, to make it clear, we don't have anything to do with the appointments. That is totally the mayor, and you stated that, and I want us to leave here with that understanding. He does all of the appointment to the housing authority. But it does not mean that we cannot have a relationship where we communicate with the director with housing in our individual wards so we can understand the plan, like this neighborhood plan that they're trying to implement. East of 52, we've invested a lot of tax dollars in individual housing, and this will just only help. I would like to, though, encourage the challenge to housing authority to see if we can get some of those people who work at Kennedy and the health area, those who are just starting out, but they start living in some of the housing there.
Yes. Again, not anyone's fault, but as I keep saying, and Councilmember Bessie and some of you at this table agree with me, we applaud the efforts of Hawes. Mr. Woods knows that. But as these money requests continue to come, I think it is imperative that we are due diligent with what we decide to do. I think if there is precedence been set, if there is history to a request, we need to understand it as a council before we get to this point. I think it's injustice, not just to the petitioner. I think it's also an injustice to staff. But we, just like a business, we got to work a little bit better at what we do, people. I mean, I can't see, as I've already stated on some of them, I cannot, in my own conscience, give a stamp of approval to things that I truly do not understand. And I just can't do that until I get the information, Chair, to make the decision that I need. Not saying we're against what the project is, but to Councilmember Bessie's question, we need to understand.
I'm already way over my 5 minutes. 5 more minutes. Is there a compromise to send this forward without recommendation?
I'll agree with that.
Is that a motion, Ms. Burke?
I move that we send it to the council without a recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? How were you voting?
Aye.
Okay.
But I had a question, because there was a question about
abstain
of
one abstention
of requests, and I'm not clear, and I don't know if staff is clear, if you know what the request is of additional consideration of item, because I don't know what that request is.
As I understand the request, staff has been asked to look back in our archives and to see if we have, if council has granted or if staff has recommended grants on these types of projects, which would be other tax credit projects, or we would expand that a little further to other large development types of projects.
Okay, thank you. Let me just say to the staff, there's two items, G4 and G5. I know we've already continued G5 from the previous meeting. G4, I think, was continued also. Is there any time sensitivity on these two items? If it's okay, let's continue them one more month, but I would appreciate if staff would put these as G1 and G2 next month. And I apologize for any folks that were here, but I was way over last month as well. Hearing no other comments, what's that? What time are we going to start?
Public safety will begin in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes at roughly 6:20. We're adjourned.